Okay, thank you very much, Nukila. Okay, good evening, everyone. Nice to meet you online. So just let me share, okay, my PowerPoint for tonight. I hope that, you can see it clearly from there. Okay, so, okay, yeah. Uh, okay, let me just start it. It's very quick, actually, because, we are going to show you later two videos regarding the migration in ASEAN. So the title of my presentation is ASEAN Migration and Human Trafficking Regulation for Social Justice. Okay, so if we look at the data, okay, regarding ASEAN migration, okay, we see that most of the migrant workers is actually up to 38% of employed population in Singapore, and also 37% in Brunei Darussalam, 50% in Malaysia, and 3% in Thailand. And among the ASEAN member state, or AMS, is almost 90% employed migrant workers in the service, industry service, and also the domestic services. And many of them is actually women. So the migrant workers in the ASEAN regions, most of them are women who work in the domestic work and also in the industrial sector. So if we talk about the mobility of migration, okay, from the ASEAN member state, the sending countries, okay, or the country of origin, like from Indonesia, okay, and then from Vietnam, from Cambodia, and others, okay, it's actually there are two types of the procedures that the migrant workers among ASEAN countries. Okay, the first is legal, meaning they are recruited legally and then they go to the ASEAN member, other receiving countries in the ASEAN regions legally. But most of them, okay, based on my research, they are conducted illegal procedures, meaning they are not legally recruited, and also the procedures from the sending country and even until when they arrive in the receiving country. So this because of the dark side of the migrations, okay, particularly for those who are recruited illegally or undergo the illegal procedures, and most of them end up as trafficking victims or human trafficking victims. So when we talk about human trafficking or trafficking in persons, is basically we talk about the migrations. The migrations meaning here among the ASEAN country, from the sending states and then to the receiving states. That could be like authorized, okay, or unauthorized if it's involve coercion, force, abduction, fraud, deception, and exploitation. So it leads to the human trafficking. So human trafficking can be occur actually in internal, meaning from within the state of ASEAN member states. For example, someone from Eastern Nusa Tenggara is trafficked to Batam, okay, or okay, from Indonesia to another neighboring countries. For example, from Indonesia, transit to Batam and then to Malaysia or to Singapore. But what we focus here is more in international trafficking, because it's from host state, from the sending state, okay, or country of origin in ASEAN member states to the receiving state or the host states. Okay, so as we look at it here, again, I talk about the elements of human trafficking or trafficking in persons. There should be action, means, and purposes. So it's actually it's under it's governed under Article 3 of the United Nations Trafficking in Person Protocol, or probably you heard about the Palermo Protocol. Okay, so there should be an action, okay, which is an action by the traffickers in the form of recruitment, transportation, transfer, harboring, or receipt of persons. And then also the means. What are the means? It could be like force or threat of force, or other force of coercion, abduction, force, and others that I already mentioned before. And then the purposes. So there should be that exploitation. Okay, there should be an exploitation. The minimum is the exploitations like the prostitution or forced labor, slavery, or servitude, or removal of organs. So these three, okay, elements only for men and women. Okay, it's not for the children, because those who are under 18 years old, okay, the means is not necessarily be there. So only if like the action and the purposes are clear, and then it can be tracked from the action of the traffickers, and also the purposes is so clear, and then the elements of trafficking in persons for the children is already occurred. So let's see what happened with the rank of each state. Okay, from each year, okay, United States of America is actually making the ranked. Okay, and for ASEAN country, we look at it, Brunei Darussalam in the tier watch list. So what does mean the tier watch list? And here is the countries which the government does not really fulfill the minimum standard, okay, about the prosecution, prevention, okay. And then the Kingdom of Cambodia is tier 3. So if it's tier 3, okay, and tier 2 watch list is quite dangerous, meaning it's the bottom. But Indonesia, okay, last year was in the tier 2 watch list, but now it's better because it's a tier 3. The Laos Democratic Republic also in tier 2, okay, and Malaysia, okay, I probably our friends from Malaysia will talk about it, migration and other stuff, okay, it's in tier 2 watch list. And Myanmar, okay, in tier 3. That's we're lucky because among the ASEAN member states we have 2 countries at least which is in tier 1, which is the Philippines and Singapore. And then the Kingdom of Thailand in tier 2, and Vietnam is in tier 2 watch list. So what this means, from the ranking, which is every year, it's submitted by the United States state government, seeing that it's actually in ASEAN member states, okay, the variety of the rank relating to how to manage and how to handle human trafficking is very different. Some countries are very good in handling it, but there are 2 countries like those, Cambodia and also Myanmar, in still tier 3. So meaning, okay, it's not fulfilled the minimum requirement in order to protect the human trafficking victims. So when we talk about the law itself, it's actually in ASEAN is their law. Okay, there's a law which is trying or reflecting the protections of people, the migrant workers in ASEAN, in order not to become the victim of trafficking. But as we understand that there is an ASEAN Charter, okay, and then there's a ASEAN Human Rights Declaration. So from this, okay, the ASEAN Charter and then ASEAN Human Rights Declarations, we have also the ASEAN Declaration on the protection and promotions of the rights of migrant workers. So there are 2 regulation relating to human trafficking. One side is from the migrations, and one is more a specialist law which is actually focuses on the human trafficking itself, or the trafficking in persons. So there's also ASEAN consensus on the protection and promotions of the rights of migrants, and ASEAN guidelines on effective return and reintegration of migrant workers. So this is more on migrant workers, but okay, if the migrant workers, okay, happen to be the victim of human trafficking, ASEAN actually provides also the laws. Okay, for example, the ASEAN declarations against trafficking in person, particularly women and children, ASEAN conventions against trafficking in person, especially women and children, or we call it active criminal justice responses to trafficking in persons, ending impunity for traffickers, and securing, this is what we call it ASEAN practitioners guidelines. And also we have ASEAN leaders joint statement in enhancing cooperations against trafficking in persons. Okay, and ASEAN Plan of Action to Combat Transnational Crime. So ASEAN is actually provides a set of regulations which is imposed on ASEAN member states relating to migrant workers, migration. But again, as I mentioned it before, if those migrant workers become the victim of trafficking, and then there's also a set of regulations provided by ASEAN in order to protect the ASEAN workers if they are happen to be the victim of trafficking. So if we look at the relevant legal instruments at the ASEAN provided the legal instruments, but in each ASEAN member states actually also have the regulation pertaining to human trafficking. We can see from Brunei Darussalam, okay, there's a trafficking and smuggling of persons order, okay, and then Kingdom of Cambodia law on suppressions on human trafficking and sexual exploitation. Indonesia also have the law number 21 of 2007 on eradication of trafficking in persons. Laos, Democratic Republic, the law on anti-trafficking in persons. Malaysia has Malaysia 27 Anti-Trafficking in Persons Act, and then Myanmar, the Anti-Trafficking in Person 2005. The Philippines also have the Anti-Trafficking in Person Act of 2003. Singapore, Prevention of Human Trafficking Act to 2014, okay, and Thailand also has the Prevention and Suppression of Human Trafficking Act, and then the Socialist Republic of Vietnam also has the law number 66, okay, which is on human trafficking and prevention and combat. So not only from the ASEAN, okay, to regulate as the regional instruments, but also each ASEAN member state has its own law, national law. Okay, so we will see that, how this law is going to be implemented. As I mentioned before, that ASEAN has the declaration, but when we talk about the declaration, it's not legally binding. Okay, so declaration, it's more on than political commitment, moral commitment by the ASEAN member state, okay, that they commit to establish a regional local network to prevent and combat trafficking in persons, particularly women and children in the ASEAN region. So that's the ASEAN Declaration. But, okay, we have also the convention. So when we talk about the convention, it's different from the declaration because the convention is legally binding. So the ASEAN member states has to the obligation to impose this, to adopt this in their national law, and then to respect and also to implement the active or this anti-trafficking convention, ASEAN Anti-Trafficking Convention, which is actually cover prevention, okay, protection, assistance, and promoting international cooperation. So what are the significances of the active provisions? As I mentioned before, it covers about prevention of trafficking, victim protection, enforcement, and monitoring compliances. So actually, as ASEAN member states, because the ASEAN member states, they have to comply with the active provisions, and there is a monitoring compliances, which is okay under that instrument itself. Okay, and also we have the ASEAN Plan of Action Against Trafficking in Persons. Okay, so it covers strengthen the rule of law and border control, okay, and also prosecute trafficking in persons cases, okay, and strengthen regional cooperation, because as I mentioned, like people from Indonesia are trafficked and they're sending to Malaysia, for example, or sending to Singapore, or okay, people from Cambodia, okay, they are trafficked and then sent to Thailand. So there's a lot of cases among the ASEAN countries, so that's why there's an ASEAN Plan of Action. Okay, and also the scope, okay, the scope that we talk about this, the action plan is also cover prevention, protection, law enforcement, and prosecution. Probably most of you will ask about law enforcement because, you know, sometimes it's beautifully regulated, it's there, but then it's very weak in the law enforcement and prosecution. And also there is a regional and international cooperation and coordination. So what is really the cooperations, okay, among the ASEAN member states? We have ASEAN Pol, yeah. We also have MLIT, you know, it's mutual legal assistance in criminal matters. And then we have also the extradition via ASEAN extraditions or AET. So there's a lot of forms. It's actually coordinating among the ASEAN member states, or they collaborate among ASEAN member states in order to prevent or also to prosecute the trafficking perpetrators. Okay, so this is the references. As I mentioned before, we are going to watch, actually, this is the very important thing, that we are watch the migrations in ASEAN. And then this is the work of actually from ASEAN, you know, ASEAN Secretariat, okay, and then you can watch it also the, you know, the long version, because what we are going to show it here is just the short version. Okay, that's the actually the introduction from me to give you an overview about ASEAN problems, migrations, and about the human trafficking. So I hand it to the MC, and please help me to show the video. Okay, thank you so much.